We're focusing on the critical alignment of product development with customer success, embedding a customer-centric approach into product strategy.
So the question I like to ask when I'm building anything or when I'm working with my team has been, if we build this today, what will it do for the end user and how will it make their lives or solve a problem for them?
Revenue teams, they are crucial for delivering a cohesive customer experience and achieving organizational goals.
So there you have a leadership team at the top of any organization, no matter the size, that is focused on working within the external and internal market forces that the company is experiencing and basically trying to navigate the company through those forces as best they can. Be strategic, obviously, in their approach, but there's a whole science to that.
Business, if you're aligning your product strategy with your customer success, please remember, a customer-centric approach is key to driving adoption, retention, and expansion. Welcome to the CanadianSME Small Business Podcast, where we explore the strategies and insights that drives success in the B2B technology sector. Now, today, we're focusing on the critical alignment of product development with customer success, embedding a customer-centric approach into product strategy, and measuring success through the lens of customer outcomes. Now, recent trends, they highlight the increasing importance of recurring revenue models and the need for B2B companies to deeply understand and cater to their customer life cycles. And this discussion will provide valuable guidance for organizations that are looking to optimize their product strategy and drive sustainable growth. And joining us today is Jason Bouros, the Director of Product and HR Delivery, Chief Product Officer at Valueflow, a company that's specializing in helping B2B enterprise technology companies design and operationalize multi-product customer life cycles. And today, we'll discuss organizing product teams around customer success, embedding customer centricity into product strategy, and proving success through customer-centric metrics. So without a further ado, let's begin our conversation with Jason. Jason, we're very pleased to have you on the show today. How are you?
Not too bad. Enjoying this beautiful weather we're having this weekend.
Of course. Now, Jason, you emphasize organizing product teams around customer success, shifting from feature delivery to outcome delivery. How can product teams practically make that mindset shift? And what does that look like on a day-to-day basis?
It's a great question. What it starts out with is really having a product team that is customer centric rather than just building things that don't provide any value necessarily, but are kind of told to be the things that they're supposed to be building. So the question I like to ask when I'm building anything or when I'm working with my team has been, if we build this today, what will it do for the end user and how will it make their lives or solve a problem for them? And I think that's a really great, simple question to ask to create that sort of mind shift that you're going to need to be successful. I think a lot of the time, especially with product teams, with how busy they are right now, they also are focused on the customer, but not necessarily that well acquainted with the customer. So they are in a situation where they're doing or not familiar with the customer lifecycle or the journey that the actual customer is going on. So CS can be your best friend in customer success as an organization, can be your best friend in really helping a product team become more enabled to be successful there. So the first thing I would recommend any product team to really do, no matter the level of the product team, be it a product manager associate or the VP of product, is really having that customer-centric approach and really starting to know your customers first of all. So go to CS, go to the revenue team, go to the sales teams, whoever you need to go to create that overall picture. Usually it's the CS team that's going to maintain that. But just take the opportunity to speak with them, understand what the actual customer lifecycle is, and really just make sure that you're on the same page as them. Because the first way to really make sure that you're getting customer-centric as a product team and really are focused on the customer is really making sure that you know the customer and you don't necessarily or get trapped in I think a trap that a lot of organizations are seeing, a lot of product teams are seeing, which is the situation of building for the ideal customer profile, but not building for your real customer. And I think that's a very significant mistake to make, but it's a very easy mistake to make if you don't have the right data, you don't have the right mindset from that you're enforcing within the team on the people side. And then the process side, if you don't have anything to actually facilitate that, then that's generally a situation where you very quickly get off the rails with that. And then you're stuck in this concept that product leaders like Roman Pichler will put in their books around just focusing on the highest paid person in the room's opinion. And generally that all might be good in the short term of your career, but long term, actually building a product that is sticky with customers is generally not the way that you're going to go about being successful. And it won't create a long term success in your career versus kind of the short term burst it might give you.
Right. Now, that's a very insightful perspective, and it's clear that a fundamental shift in mindset is required, focusing on solving customer problems rather than just building features. And I think that kind of customer outcome focus is incredibly valuable. Now, Jason, building on this importance of the right mindset, let's discuss how to embed this customer centricity directly into the product strategy and the execution process. Because ensuring that product strategy aligns with market needs while really balancing the customization and scalability is at the end of the day a key to creating lasting value. So tell us, what are some key best practices for really embedding customer centricity into this product strategy and execution processes, really ensuring continuous lifecycle alignment and balancing customization with scalability?
Perfect. It's a great question. So when we think about the three aspects we need to really think about as a product team, first one being the people that we just touched on, the second one being process, and the final one being outcomes, and we're changing from outputs to outcomes. When you think about process, the first step I recommend product teams take is really focus that energy on actually building out that customer life cycle. So you would be doing this likely with the customer success team or the customer success organization within your larger organization. And it's an opportunity to really reset your understanding of the customer lifecycle and the journey the customer is actually going on. So what it would be is a scenario where you have either access to the existing customer lifecycle that should be mapped by your CS team of almost any size organization should have that. From there, you might need to make a decision on, is this still up to date basically with what you're trying to be doing with your customer? Does this accurately represent the customer today that is using our product? Or is this something that was created 3 to 4 years ago, is a relic at this point in time, was important at the time, but our business, like all businesses, really shift and evolve. So the first step in the process is really making sure you have the correct customer lifecycle map. And I think that's something that a lot of product teams aren't thinking about right now. They kind of just give it to the CS team. We'll keep our hands off of that. We'll just give it to CS. They're doing that. And then they kind of go on their way just to start building features and building out requirements, creating value. But then you start to see the silos start to form in that point. Something else I'd want to call out there is, especially with your CS organization, your CS leadership, they should really be made to understand why that you need to be partnering with them. And most CS organizations I've worked with, they're more than happy to work with product on anything because they understand the value of having product on their side, partnered with them, creating the things that their customers are screaming at them to get.
Mm-hmm.
So after that first phase, you build out, or you rebuild, or you just validate the existing customer life cycle. It goes on to a second phase of building processes around the maintenance of the customer life cycle, or at least understanding and delivering that information back to the product team. So this can be done with the CS team, with the customer success organization, with the revenue team perhaps. But it's a situation where there's either a process to update that document that's likely owned by the CS team, but there are processes to ensure that there's cross-collaboration between the product team and the CS organization to make sure that the values are actually updated. There's a single customer lifecycle that both organizations, I should say both departments, are heavily invested in, on basically have parity as far as their understanding of what the customer actually needs, what the customer is actually doing, and all the steps it takes to get there. Once you have those two first phases, you have a scenario where you can implement some of the product best practices that are probably more traditional. So it's really bringing in either agile delivery or a similar delivery model for your organization that allows for agile build and agile pivoting of requirements and needs. And then it's taking an opportunity to just align your product team with the skills that they need to be successful as a product team. So again, it's the ability to be empathetic to the customer. It's making sure that the leaders in the product team are really delivering this kind of messaging to the team, and being the first line of defense against kind of the highest paid person's opinion, versus actually creating value, protecting your team and giving your team the ability to build customer-centric features that solve customer problems and have direct correlations to basically the success of your business, the success of your customer, more importantly, and the value delivery to that customer.
That's a very structured and strategic approach, in fact. And you're right. I mean, institutionalizing customer feedback loops and simplifying life cycle stages, it seemed crucial for efficiency. And I think that kind of process integration is very, very important. Business, if you're aligning your product strategy with your customer's success, please remember a customer-centric approach is key to driving adoption, retention, and expansion. Now let's get back to our conversation with Jason and explore how to measure success through the customer lens. So with the right teams and processes in place, how do we actually measure the impact of this? This is our next topic, because you advocate, Jason, for shifting, from output matrix to outcome matrix. What are some key customer-centric metrics that B2B tech companies should be tracking to prove success, and how can product team performance be tied to these outcomes?
I love that question. So I think you hit the nail on the head with you need to move from outputs, which a lot of product teams are stuck in. And I think a lot of product teams don't necessarily want to be there. But from what I've seen, the scenario has been created from the top down where you have product teams that are very output focused because that's the traditional management style that has been given them to effectively, that's their understanding of the world when they came up. And that those are very popular ideas that I think are evolving very quickly, and sometimes that gets missed because there's so many things to do. So at that point, it's really shifting from those outputs onto the customer specific outcomes. So what are you doing for the business, or what are you doing for the customer, I should say more specifically, to make their lives better, and again, just to bring them value, to make the product stickier. So the first set of metrics I would say probably to start moving away from, which I think are really from what I've seen are warning signs, are the output metrics of an over focus on story points, an over focus on features built. So very, quantity being the thing that you need to push in front of leadership, or you need to push in front of anyone within the organization to kind of get that recognition, which is a different, obviously, leadership issue overall if that's a value within the organization. And the final one, I think I would branch under the features that are almost most closely aligned with what leadership is asking for, without any information on if they actually provide value to the customer. I've seen quite a few experiences of almost these presentations. Could they be a quarterly release, or they're just a monthly product meeting with the leadership team or with different departments, and then you almost have this separate section for like features that are directly associated with an executive, which is very interesting to see. So it's almost like the golden list that's associated to, hey, the CEO asked for that, the CFO asked for this. This is like, we got this done for you. We got this done really fast. We got it done really well. CFO, CEO asked for it, and this is what we're presenting to everybody, what was built. But the question that doesn't get asked and needs to be asked by product leadership, needs to be asked by your peers in the organization in whole, is the ability to say, hey, that was requested by leadership. Why was that requested by leadership? Despite who has asked for it and the amount of money that they make and their positioning in the organization, why did they ask for that? What will that do for the customer at the end of the day? And I think that is almost one of the main warning signs that most organizations right now should be looking at are, hey, do most of the features that I'm pushing right now within my presentation and I'm most proud of, one's directly associated to a leadership position without any information on how it actually impacts the customer. The customer is very much the last person kind of to even find out about this feature sometimes, right, which is always an interesting kind of marketing conundrum. And people work really well together to solve those issues, but you should be really avoiding them in the first place. So getting away from outputs and getting into outcomes is starting to shift into metrics such as percentage of customers who get X value by X date within the product, and understanding kind of the value that they're getting, and time to value being really, really crucial there. Now, understanding what time to value is a whole separate action on its own, but is really crucial. And I think a lot of product teams aren't taking the time they need to be doing that well, is saying what is time to value, what is the value, the tipping point for the value to be created created to the end user by the product. So I think there's obviously, big well-known brands that do that very well, that invest heavily into doing that and have been successful in one part because they have that customer-centric focus to them. Another metric I think is very important right now is the stickiness of the product, and you can measure that a few different ways: daily active users, monthly active users. Basically, not only are you bringing the users in and you're giving them the value right away, but you can demonstrate that you have a product that is sticky, that is keeping the user in your product, and really making sure that they're creating value in there, and it's actually solving problems for them. Customer success, I think, on the other side of the coin here, they're very well acquainted with this issue of seeing a customer sold something that they actually never use. There's no product usage or anything associated to it. And then, churn immediately becomes their understanding of the situation. And they're very happy to tell the product team that early on and say, hey, this huge customer specifically is trying to do this, but it's not really necessarily working out for them. They're not using it. Like, they've spent like 7 figures, but haven't seen any usage in the last 6 months. I'm alarmed. You should be alarmed too. And product needs to understand that, hey, okay, there's an immediate need the CS team can help solve, or an immediate problem. But the long-term problem that they're able to solve is really going in and digging down into these core customers and understanding why they're not using it, and how they can not necessarily redesign the product, but what changes they need to make to be successful there. And then the final outcome-specific metric I would really push is product usage. So again, like we just talked about, are people using your product? How often are they using your product? And have you been able to take your data and associate that data back to basically the success of an account? So I think one of the big things is, when you're looking at the product usage associated to your most successful customers versus your least successful customers, do you have the data to support that? Which I think is really the one thing I would caution as a precursor to a lot of these things. And is this something you're going to need to get done, no matter the size of your organization? You're an enterprise, you're a small business, or really what size your organization is. It's, do you have the data capabilities to understand the data, to store the data, and really have a data-driven decision-making process? So I mean, product usage is one of those facets, but it sounds easy to do, but the complexities are, and which can be a whole different session, is how you actually build out a data model that's going to support your customers, which is key.
Oh, that's a very results-oriented approach, Jason. And you're right, focusing on metrics that truly reflect customer value and business growth is essential. And I think that kind of customer-driven measurement is very valuable. Measuring success by what truly matters to customers changes everything. It's a fresh way to look at product impact and team performances. Let's pause here for a quick break. When we come back, we'll discuss how breaking down silos between teams and can create a seamless journey for customers. So please don't go anywhere.
Hey, you think you know UPS? Yeah, that's us. Everybody knows that. You know what you didn't know? This. Okay, try to keep up. Ocean, us. Ground, rail, air, so us. Guess who? Us. Customs cleared, borders cleared, done. Us. You still with me? Wait for it. Boom. Us. Intelligent, automated, fulfillment. Us. Yep. Healthcare too. Digital your thing? Yeah. Well, book it, ship it, track it. You feeling me yet? Yep. That's all us. That's all UPS.
Thanks for sticking with us. Now let's shift our gears and talk about the powerful collaboration between product, customer success, and revenue teams that drives real customer-centric growth. Now let's dive into how integrating customer feedback loops can drive continuous product improvement, because revenue teams, they are crucial for delivering a cohesive customer experience and in achieving organizational goals. How should the relationship between product, customer success, and revenue evolve in a truly customer-centric organization to ensure alignment and shared goals?
Another great question. So I would start at the top with the leadership team. So there you have a leadership team at the top of any organization, no matter the size, that is focused on working within the external and internal market forces that the company is experiencing, and basically trying to navigate the company through those forces as best they can. Be strategic, obviously, in their approach, but there's a whole science to that. So if you have a leadership team, or you have a scenario where your leadership team hasn't been enabled to actually create a cohesive vision for your organization or for your business as a whole, you can't do any of the other things I'm going to mention. So it's back to basics, business school 101, but it's really, do you have a vision for your organization, and is that vision being shared with your organization?
Right.
Once you have that at the very top, and you have a solid, cohesive direction and vision for your organization, then you go down a level. You go into the department heads. You go into basically the leadership associated with each department. So to your point, looking at product leadership, looking at customer success leadership, and then revenue leadership, which could be sales, could be a separate revenue department. You could see a scenario where CS and sales are both within the same revenue organization, but effectively it's at that level. You need to be able to create KPIs and OKRs that are associated directly with the overall vision that has been given to those leaders by their, obviously, the main leaders of the organization at the very top. So it's building out all your objectives and strategies. I think in Agile, or I know in Agile, you would call them epics, effectively, over strategic initiatives. But it's basically that next level down of, all right, this is the vision for my CEO and my leadership team. How am I going to do things in this quarter, in this year, or whatever the time frame is going to be, from a product side, from a CS side, from a revenue side, to facilitate success here? So for product and CS especially, it's needing to make sure that these KPIs, or whatever the metrics that they're using, are outcome focused, obviously, but are also aligned. If you have an organization or you have departments that are trying to solve different problems for the customer within that same year, within that same vision, you are going to immediately see that the people are not going in the same direction. You are going to see at the very bottom, kind of the individual contributors are also going to be being pulled in different directions, and you are going to lose cohesion at that kind of mid layer. And then finally, I think it's coming down to the individual contributor level, that lower, but the base of the organization, where you have people actually doing their contributions. It's making sure that those KPIs are also well understood by them, and that they are fanatically enabled to care about those KPIs, fully understand them, have been brought through what they mean to the organization, and especially what they mean to the customer. And then from there, you have an opportunity to again make sure everyone's aligned. I think a good litmus test for this is going into various members of a CS organization or a product organization and saying, hey, what are the customer's top 3 problems? What's the biggest problem for the customer right now? What do customers care about the most? So if you start getting different answers from different people that are consistently different, then you have an issue, or you have a scenario where you need to almost go further up the chain to solve that problem. Now, people will always have the most pressing issue being, hey, what they're working on right now, perhaps, or a customer escalation or a scenario like that. And you will see that. So that's definitely not to say that you can't have those scenarios, but it is that kind of consistent situation where you're talking to people and they have completely different understandings of what the customer actually needs. So again, in that scenario, going back, now that you've tried to tie everyone in, and if you have a scenario where you have people who basically don't have different understandings of what the customer's issues are and what the customer's value or the value that they want to see is, then you can go back to your customer lifecycle, your customer journeys, kind of what you've mapped out, and say, hey, this is what we think the reality of our customers are, and this is where we want them to be. So something I didn't touch on earlier a little bit is when you are doing that customer lifecycle mapping, you can do the ideal customer lifecycle, and then you can do, obviously, the reality of the customer lifecycle at current, and that'll also give you an ability to identify gaps and identify the opportunities for growth into the customer lifecycle that you want your customers to be in versus the one they're in now. So again, I think the reality is important. I think the vision of where they should be is very crucial. And then when you get these kind of tactical day-to-day problems or tactical issues of okay, well, this is really where the rubber meets the road, then you have the documentation to support and kind of correct those teams back and enable them to be successful because you've taken the time to do the upfront work of doing the proper mapping, setting the proper KPIs, the OKRs, making sure that your outcome metrics, again, facilitate the success of your individual contributors on the product team, especially. If you have, I think, product people in general of various experiences, they're all should be very kind of excited and fanatical about product, about building things, about making a difference. If they're building the wrong thing, it's highly likely it's just because one of those other factors has failed, and that person will be more than happy to really get back on the proper road because they want to be successful and they want to make sure that their customers are successful to a really refreshing degree. I think a lot of organizations I've worked with, there's always been at least one person who's really stood out as kind of that product all-star, that fanatical product person who really loves what they're doing, really cares about the customers, is staying up at night almost just to be so overly focused on making a successful customer or successful product for a customer, make a customer successful. I think there's a lot of great people out here in different organizations of various sizes, and it's just grabbing those people and making sure that they're enabled. Because I think the blockers usually come from other areas of the organization where they're now being asked to build something that makes sense because it's important to somebody who's obviously very high up and important to the organization. But that person, again, if they're very high up in the organization, they likely have lost some of the ability to see kind of what's going on in the day-to-day, and then won't have the sharpest view of what's going on. And that's why you have so many people in an organization of various skill sets within your CS organization, with your product organization as well, who are boots on the ground, who do have the data and can stand up to the leadership and say, hey, leadership, I'm here to do this job for you. And this is why I think this is this. And this is why I think that is that. And this is why I think what you're asking for actually is not the best approach. How can we get together to kind of pivot it to a different approach that's going to create value? And I think leadership has kind of been a thread in all of this. And I think the leaders that I've been most astounded and hugely respect are really the leaders who say, yeah, you know what, I like that, I'm wrong, do that, that's fantastic. And they'll say that in front of anyone. They'll say that in front of their entire company. They'll say that in front of their entire leadership team. And I think those are the people who really stand out in most organizations right now, are the ones who are willing to be wrong. Anybody who says, well, I see your data, but I don't agree with it, and I think we should just keep doing what we're doing. If they don't have any ability, or if they do see something kind of at a leadership level in the market, those people need to really get those ideas on paper. They need to be able to share a vision with the rest of the organization to say, hey, I know you have that data now, but these are the headwinds I see kind of coming down the pipe, and this is why I think we need to make that. And it's to a certain point, it's a conversation I think is critical. And again, I think good leaders are more than happy to have that.
That sounds like a very comprehensive and a collaborative integrated model. And you're right, breaking down silos and fostering communication between teams is crucial for a unified customer experience. And I think that kind of cross-functional alignment is very important here. Now, building on the importance of cross-functional alignment, Jason, let's dive into the role of leadership in fostering these connections and ensuring that teams work together effectively. You shared an anecdote from your early career about leadership in the automotive industry. How did that experience really shape your understanding of effective leadership and the importance of aligning a team around a shared vision, Jason?
It's really funny sometimes where you learn the most in your career. This is basically an experience I had very early on in my career. I was working for an automotive marketer that's very well known to the Canadian public, and I'm sure almost everyone has either bought a car that was marketed by them, or has worked with, or purchased a car from a dealer who does work with this organization. Part of my role in this kind of more marketing specific role was going to various automotive businesses like dealerships and being a rep for them effectively, and performing services for them, and really just creating the relationships there. In this role, I would work with massive dealer chains who have dealerships all over Canada, who have huge staffs and huge amount of funds and capital to be successful. And I would also have dealerships that were very small, that were 2 or 3 people sometimes, were just the owner operator kind of model of, hey, like this dealer who has the dealer license, he's here every single day, 9 to 5, probably actually a lot more than 9 to 5 in the automotive industry, but they're there every day and they're working really in the trenches and they're creating value. And one of these dealers that I met, again, who was working for who owned his smaller dealership, so passionate about what he was doing. He understood what he wanted to do for his customers. He had a fantastic vision, and it was really remarkable to see how passionate this person was to make their business successful, understand where the whole market was going and how to serve that market. Fanatical about their customers, always chatting with the customers, really building solid relationships with these customers, and just really great to watch. But I kind of noticed that at a certain point, after I'd been working with him for a few months, well, this is probably the most passionate dealer I'm working with right now. He owns it, and he's just very passionate about everything. He owns every aspect of the business, has this really powerful vision for what he wants to be, but it really never seems like he always seems like he's stressed out about, components of the business that are maybe not working like he wanted them to be. The vision he's told me about, a few months back or when I started with him, that vision really is not seeming to get any closer for him. And this person seems so powerful and able to do these things. Like, I wonder what's happening. And it very quickly became apparent that when we speak about vision, a leader's vision and the vision for the organization, you really need to be able to share that with people versus forcing it down their throats, versus kind of taking this very authoritarian approach. I realized very quickly that this individual was not sharing this vision with anyone. They did not understand, and I've seen this in software, I've seen this in many different businesses since, the entrepreneur who's so intelligent, so capable, and has such a great understanding of their vision. They don't understand that everyone else doesn't understand it like they do. They haven't shared it with anyone. So you'll be working with somebody on a day-to-day, and they'll get very upset. One of these entrepreneurial types, and this gentleman was the same way, would just not understand why something wasn't done the way he knew it needed to be done, would be frustrated with, things not going the way they were supposed to be, and really frustrated that everyone else wasn't as passionate as he was to be successful. And I think that again just really solidifies, if this person had taken the opportunity to bring people into his vision, make them part of his success in the way of being part of his plan, being part of the vision, being part of everything that he saw, and just explaining that to people, I think he would have seen a lot of these more day-to-day issues almost evaporate overnight. Because the biggest one I had seen, again, and I think human capital is very important. The resources of having good people around you are key to making any business successful. And in this scenario, basically, because people were so almost afraid of this particular person, and just really didn't like being around him at all. As soon as they got another offer, they were gone. So all of the experience they had gained by working there, all of the different experiences they had with coworkers, with customers, with key accounts and partners of the organization, were lost as soon as they were gone. And I think this is probably the biggest practical example of this, was just the loss of resources, loss of the right people. If you're not keeping the right people because you haven't been able to share your vision with them, I think it's going to be very hard to be successful. And it's, again, something in software later in my career I now see as the people who are sometimes the most successful are the ones who are the most passionate, not about just the vision, but it's about bringing people into the vision. So it's a shared vision between you and your team, you and your staff, no matter if it's a 10-person company, a 3-person company, or a 10,000-person company. I think that's again is one of the things that makes a leader a leader.
Amazing. No, that is I think that kind of a real world experience is very relatable. And this has been a very enlightening conversation with you, Jason. And we'd love to conclude by summarizing some of the key insights for our listeners and highlight Valuewise and Valueflow. So please tell us, what are the key takeaways that you'd like our listeners to remember about this conversation? And for B2B enterprise tech companies that are looking to optimize their customer life cycles, what is the first step you would recommend they take with Valuewise and Valueflow?
So I think the three things I would want someone to take away from this conversation is, again, there's three aspects of making your product team customer-centric. And that first one is making sure that the people are aligned via, customer empathy, and just working to make sure that they're enabled to be understanding the customer life cycle, understanding of really what the customer's needs are and being fanatical about them, which I think they'll be very happy to do. I think the second aspect is the process of building out customer lifecycle process and customer lifecycle updating process, and the product delivery models, which obviously are really key here. But I mean, they're spoken about in so many other places. I'm sure people can go and kind of learn a little bit more about that there, or maybe in the future I'll speak to that. And then the final aspect again is getting rid of outputs and focusing on outcomes. Outcomes for your customers, outcomes for your business, but outcomes for your customers especially. So Valueflow is a product that we've built over the last little while that this actually does customer lifecycle for any size organization. We saw a need for it. I think we saw a lot of organizations that were effectively managing their customer lifecycle in a Visio, in a spreadsheet, in a document that had 200 plus notes on it that was created for a very high cost, but haven't been updated in 3 years. So if you asked anybody what the customer lifecycle was, no one really knew, except for a few key people who were just so embedded with customers, they would probably not even have the time to kind of have those discussions with leadership. So Valueflow is effectively the next phase of doing that. It works very easily to allow that by having purpose-built design cards that let you drill into them and show key data. We're currently pulling data into the platform via traditional data methods, and AI is something that we're actually working on as well at the current time, just to obviously move with the market. And as the technology becomes easier to implement and becomes more available for an organization of any size, it's obviously something we see and feel very strongly about. And then Valuewise, which is our sister company. So I'm the Chief Product Officer of Valueflow and Director of Agile and Product Delivery for Valuewise. That's an established consulting organization that helps customers and helps large enterprises increase their net dollar retention and effectively work to have a more cohesive and powerful customer success organization that again can prevent churn and really just increase overall revenue. We've had a lot of great case studies go up on the website as of recent, so I encourage everyone to go to Valuewise's website, learn a little bit more about case studies where we've practically made a difference for some large enterprise customers, and kind of just really demonstrates much better than I can today how we've done it, and then the impact on these organizations in a very positive sense of making it kind of a no-brainer to understand that if it's not us, it's really key right now. All organizations need to kind of rethink how they're doing customer success and managing the revenue of their organizations.
Jason, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your insights with us today. I mean, your practical advice and the customer-centric approach, they're both really valuable, and we really appreciate the time that you took out to join us today. So thank you for that.
Thank you for having me.
And that was an insightful conversation with Jason Bouros, the Director of Product and Agile Delivery, Chief Product Officer at Valuewise, in aligning product strategy with customer success and driving efficient recurring revenue growth. Valuewise and their innovative Valueflow platform offer a comprehensive solution for B2B enterprises that are looking to optimize their customer life cycles. Thank you for tuning into the podcast. We really appreciate your continued support. Please be sure to subscribe to our podcast for more expert insights and resources that can help your business thrive. You can also visit our website, CanadianSME.ca, for valuable information and tools. Special shout out to our partners, RBC, UPS, Google, and A1 Global College for their ongoing commitment to empowering small businesses in Canada. Until next time, please keep innovating and striving for success. We'll see you in the next episode.